Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness gnosis. What we're going to talk about here is radionic energies and how to harness them. Now, few people understand what radionic energies are. Nobody's really defined it until recently when I have, and it's not really very complicated. People have been talking about these types of energies for millenniums. It's nothing new, but nobody's ever really figured out how to do this in a very direct way, which is what radionics is all about, using a type of hybrid technology to access informational energetic fields or the creation of the universe. God energy. God is basically can be defined as a creator energy. What you can't do is take something from nothing and make it into a physical. That's what God does. Now, you can interact with informational energetic fields, otherwise known as occultons, and form them at a primitive level yourself. And this should increase over time like everything else to get into a higher level of harnessing and accessing these energies. There is very advanced instrumentation, which I am developing right now and getting to a high level. And you have to pick up these energies in a much more advanced way, which basically no one's doing except myself. And this requires a lot of development, money, and time to do. So to get these kind of very advanced technologies that apparently everyone else has kind of missed, is critical to the evolution of this kind of technology. This is the technology, though, and let's make sure we are fully aware of that. So you're taking the essence of life or vibrational energies that are emitting vibrations, frequencies. You can, depending on what you can actually understand. But basically, they're informational energetic fields. Now, they're informational because they're packed with information. They're energetic because they actually do something. An information field that is non-energetic is worthless. But when we're trying to access energies, this is where the big problem comes in, and how do you access these subtle energies? This is what reaching the state of gnosis is all about, by building yourself, practicing the skills that are involved in sensitizing yourself to these energies. Now, radionics uses these very sensitive, non-physical energies. They're energetic in nature. They are physical and they aren't. So I don't want to get into that argument there, but there is something there. It's just that it is not considered on the physical level because basically your ignoramus scientists have not built proper technologies to sense and measure these. Yet it certainly can be done. If you can measure neutrinos and other types of particles, even gravity, which is extremely weak, gravitons, then you can pretty much measure anything. But they don't want to get into that because, again, we have all these problems, but I don't want to get bogged down into that. But you as a radionic practitioner, and using subtle energy tools in general, because they're all radionic in nature. All of ourselves, everything we offer is radionic in nature. You're dealing with subtle energies. You have to totally change your whole way of thinking, how you sense, etc. I mean, it's just, this is why I keep stressing so much training. So if you're not training yourself, if you're not sensitizing yourself, and part of our visualization tools is a sensing aspect to them. You sense colors, you sense shapes. It's not just visualizing. It's a whole sensing tool that we offer. And this is critical because you have to now learn how to sense real energies instead of the crude, very physical energies that are out there. Because working with those is very easy and everybody does it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But to learn how to do the other ones, you have to get control of your mind. You have to center yourself. You have to use all the psi type tools. You have to turn psi wheels. You have to work with your consciousness, your higher self, to start sensing the real energies of life. And this requires practice. Now, we try and get people past all this stuff in many ways by giving you tools that kind of shortcut most of the work that you have to do. But people want extreme results, or you're going to have extreme training if you want extreme results. So all of these things work because you focus energy, you draw them in and project them to a target. But people want, these manifestations. And these awesome manifestations has nothing to do with the tool. It has to do with you. You cannot sense and use, bring in, and project subtle energies. You just can't do it, at least not on a high level. As you start using our tools, we do a lot of the work for you. And of course, as you do this on a particular daily process, what happens is that you are able to sense these energies more and more and use them more and more. And then, of course, there's tools as you tune into them. But the average person just can't do much of this. And, of course, that's why we're going to be providing things called rates, which are symbolic numbers that represent energies. So if it's an energy for success, well, there's a number symbolic rate for that. And you can then put that into a machine, taking that sigil, that numbers pushed together, putting it into a machine or writing it down and then amplifying. The whole key is amplification, ultimately. The tuning process to get a finite number takes a highly skilled person that pretty much nobody can do. Past that, and if you get the number, of course, you've had a general number for that, which you can bring into your life. But what's the problem? Well, let's talk about the different forms of energy. Now, I think people kind of understand, if you listen to my lectures, of what subtle energy is. And these are these informational energetic fields. Occultons that mix with psions. Psions are formative energy information, specific energy information that intermix with occultons to start manifesting something physical. So if you're in space, maybe that'll be a gas. The gas may turn into a rock. The rock may turn into a planet. The planet turns into so many things. And you're talking about, billions of years because of the process. Now, we look at this as a terrible long process, and it certainly is, even if we look at galaxies and everything else. This is a huge amount of time, billions, millions of years. When we look at the human lifespan, it's just mind-boggling. I mean, we look at things that are close to us that may have life, and it's like, 200 light years away. Do you understand what a light? So at the speed of light, it's going to take you 200 years to get there. Well, we don't live to be 200, so I don't know how that works. This is where they show you in the movies, or they put people to sleep and everything else. Well, that's not really a very valid technology. It doesn't really work, especially not for hundreds of years. But so the whole idea is this: the problem with space in general is the distances. But before we get, again, I got distracted there, but the whole idea is that we're talking about sensing these energies and how it interacts with things and then makes things. The psions and occultons are basically what you could consider the God particles or God creative energy. They make everything. Now, you can interact with these energy fields, but you can't make them. So that's the difference between you and God. And so many people, particularly in the, quote, New Age, or even people who tend to be satanic, want to think that they are God. You are not God. You're not even close. The problem with religion is that it tells you to totally let yourself be guided by somebody else, which I think is absurd. You're given an intelligence to work with these energies, but you can't create creative energies. You manipulate and mold them. So that's very important to understand as well. So this is the energy that you want to access and tap into. And it's all around you all the time. This is made up of a huge variety of known and unknown particles, neutrons, tachyons, gravitons, etc. are the main three things that science has labeled. But those are just the crude terminology. What's attached to gravitons, what's attached to tachyons, what's attached to neutrons is quite a bit different and totally and completely undiscovered. But there's no use using verbiage and me going into 100 pages of all the different energies that are there and how they enter. It's not important. And I'm not a person who likes to get into either theory or, I hear this all the time of how much everybody knows, particularly medical science, of what they know about this and the functioning of the cells. The point is, you don't have a cure for anything. Who cares? We've got to make something happen. So over-explanation doesn't do anything. And going into it to try and show your pseudo-intellectual grasping of something when you really don't have any answers. We know all. But what's the cure for cancer? Well, we don't have that. Well, you just explained to me in 10,000 pages what cancer was, what happens to the body. Well, you must not know if you can't cure it. So it doesn't make any sense to go with that. But, this is a long run. So what you're doing is, as a radionic practitioner, you're tapping into those subtle energy fields and forming them through consciousness, not through thought, not through psychic power, but from bioconsciousness, which is a mixture of bio and spiritual energies. So you need to understand. So it's not just your psychic back. It's not just psychic. And we went over that already, what psychic means. And it's a terrible word that has been distorted. But it goes into all these things. You're using your higher self to do. Now, we all know that extraterrestrials, any of the research done on them, that they have machines, but ultimately it's the human consciousness that controls everything. They don't really have on and off buttons, so your consciousness does things, and a consciousness is what ultimately controls machinery. That's what its super advanced technology is about, and that technology is here today in a primitive form. It's called radionics. So, which is a general and bad term, but again, let's try and keep things at a level where people understand. Starting new words and trying to put new concepts out there is generally not a good thing to do. It causes confusion, and then definitions have to be constantly repeated. So we all know what this kind of machine is by just stating the term radionic. Now, what you have to do is figure out how to grab, manipulate, tune into those non-physical at a gross level fields. You have to learn how to tune into pure energy. Now, you're not pure energy. You're kind of the complete opposite. All of us have been brought down to the lowest physical level. So here's the problem. Let me illustrate this. Let's say you need vitamin C, right? And regardless of the type, et cetera, I'm not going to get into that, but you need vitamin C. So you take a vitamin C tablet. That tablet goes into your biosystem physically. Vitamin C tablet is a physical tablet. It's a makeup of whatever, whether it's natural or artificial. It goes into your body. Your body then breaks it down through basically an acid process. It burns it. So it burns it down, makes it into a lower and lower physical reality. So you go from this very physical, and then it keeps breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down. Now, what common science says is it breaks it down into chemicals that your body can then use. It breaks that vitamin C down into a chemical that is then taken in. It has to go through your liver, your kidneys, everything else. So it's a whole process anytime you put anything in your system. But what is going on there? Well, obviously, it's not a powder when it enters your liver and your kidney and everything else. It's been turned into another chemical, which now can be accessed by the body. So the body keeps breaking it down. And what the scientist says is it breaks it down into these chemicals that can be used. Well, ultimately, that's not true. What it breaks it down is into vibration, energy, an informational energetic field that your body then uses. So that tablet is broken down into the informational energetic field of vitamin C. Your body then uses that information energetic field to take throughout your body. So now there are chemical makeups here as well. But we are doing things backwards because it's simplistic, and that's all we quite understand. Now, technically, what you'd want to do as a radionic practitioner is that you would get the informational energetic vibrational rate, the number symbol for vitamin C, put that into your machine, and then you would see if you would take in the vitamin C at a vibrational level that would give you what you need. I mean, ideally, that would be the way to do everything. The problem with this is it doesn't work too well. When you put physical objects like that, like a vitamin tablet on a machine, it's too crude. The machine really can't pick up that energy. But what you're trying to do is take that energy and put it into a symbolic number that your consciousness can then take in and use as if it was a physical item. Well, this doesn't work too well. You have to break things down because your machine has trouble doing that, even when your consciousness intermixed with it. So if you wanted to get a rate for vitamin C, you'd have to get a tablet, smash it, liquefy it, so that you have something that's more of a closer vibrational rate. It's been broken down. And then, of course, you can continue to do this and get it to a vibrational essence, which is what homeopathy is about. So you get rid of as much physical as you can, leaving behind just the vibration. And this is why cutting something with homeopathics, the more you cut it, the more powerful it is, so they say. Well, you are getting a vibration, but your body can't handle vibrations. It's not set for that. It's set for physical products. So now you see the problem. So your consciousness is set that, well, yeah, I get results from vitamin C because I stick it in my mouth and swallow it. Your body is conditioned to break down energies and suck it in this way. So unless you are a person who has reached the state of Christ consciousness and understand how the world really works, unless you're a student of subtle energy physics and start converting your thinking over to an entire energetic world, you'll never get anywhere. The problem is that you have to be at a high level. So theoretically, what you would want to be able to do is take a vitamin tablet in your left hand, concentrate on it, and say, I'm taking all the vitamin C energy into my etheric body, which will use it as if it was physical. And that's all you would need. Now, we don't know if that drains the energy out of there. Is that tablet now used up? We would have to do research in all this area. So this is where you have to perfect things, where you have to develop. But we understand the technology, and it's not trying to find something out. It's trying to develop this subtle energy. So the point is you can't take it in. This is the big problem. So you're so accustomed to and so brainwashed to take something physical and then break it down. That's how your body works. But most of the time, your body is only, it's like an internal combustion engine. They're very inefficient. So physical stuff is very inefficient. Well, it has to go through the stomach. It has to be breaking down. What happens if you ate something before that but blocks the process? It has to go through your liver and your kidneys. Are they working to the level they should be? And then, of course, it goes through it. But it's amazing how fast something goes into your system. So I recommend everybody get themselves one of these glucose meters, which are fairly inexpensive. The strips can be expensive that go in the machine, but you're not going to be using a lot of these unless you're a diabetic or something. But you can take your blood sugar at a time where you've been fasting. And then, after you've done that, and you say you get your setting, whatever that may be, 100, 110, whatever it is after fasting, maybe lower, then eat something. And if you really want to see something quick, eat like a candy bar. Eat sugar of some sort. Or you can eat bread or other things. This is basically like eating sugar. Shockingly. And you'll see after eating, within minutes, even sometimes instantly, if you chew on one little piece of chocolate and you then take your blood reading, you'll see how it shoots up and doubles. That's how fast things get in your system. That's what's so exciting about subtle energies as well. And we have to understand that. And I don't think people get this unless they physically take a test like that. And you should know your blood sugar anyway. It's critical in this day and age. Find out what triggers you, what doesn't. It's surprising, certain things that trigger your, people are all allergic to wheats and other things. So most likely when you take even things like whole wheat, that's equivalent of like taking 3 or 4 tablespoons or teaspoons of sugar. I assimilate regular sugar better than I assimilate all these kind of wheat products, which are very shoot my person. So you have to find out what works and what doesn't with you. And having high blood sugar ain't good, period. It's very bad for your system, and sugar doesn't seem to do anything for you. You must remember that your body makes sugar. What? Well, I didn't know this either. You don't need sugar. And you don't really even need carbohydrates because carbohydrates are sugar. And your body is a sugar burner. So your body burns sugar. And everything is converted to sugar so it can burn it. Plants do the same thing. They convert everything to sugar. So, and most people don't know that, and I wasn't really aware. Well, you're using the chemicals and the proteins. Well, I mean, this is part of it, but your body works on sugar. You're a sugar-burning machine. So it's important to know these things, and something everyone should have and test to see what happens. What happens when you eat a whole bunch of grains you think are good for you? What happens when you eat other sugars? So you may be better off eating a candy bar than you are eating wheat toast. So all those things you have to look at, and everything, when you're younger, you can get away with stuff, and you should know what you're doing and know how your body's running. But the whole idea is start good habits now and don't think, And we're going to talk about energetic things on other subjects of foods here in another lecture very soon. But the whole idea is you would want to just grab something, suck the energy into you. It goes into your energetic fields of your biosystem and starts producing that. Now, there are things that are on the physical level, but they're not really physical. They're going into the energetic bodies and doing it. This could be nutrients. This could be protection, but it's also go into the many more, quote, less direct energy fields for charisma, for love, for money, for success. All of these are energy fields you can take in as well, and it's all part of life. And to differentiate them from physical energies like vitamin C and other things really isn't correct. They're all energy fields. And they're just used for different things. We have, if we took in pure energies that worked into our bio bodies and sustained all of your bio bodies, which then will sustain your physical body, we would technically never have to eat physical food. And of course, this has been proven to be done by people who reach high states of spiritual belief, people who are building their body into energy, turning it into light, and ascending ultimately. And this has been proven to be done. Needless to say, it ain't easy. So, but this is what everybody does in all spiritual traditions. I mean, generally, I don't think there's any spiritual tradition that values the physical. It doesn't mean you want to cast it away, but the whole idea is ultimately you are turning into a non-physical entity and going wherever. Christians go to heaven. But you're not going there. You're not walking upstairs. You're not physical. So you basically have to get rid of the physical body to go on to a higher level. Now, this is something that people shouldn't necessarily rush. It's not. Some spiritual people deliberately don't take care of their physical body so they can die sooner. This is different cults throughout India, etc., because they have no concern for the physical, because it has no value. And anything that's physical, I don't care if you live 2,000 years, ultimately that 2,000-year-old whatever is no longer existing. So the physical ultimately never has any value. So you want to get into that. But how do you do that? How do you grab these energies? How do you bring them in? Well, this is where a bunch of tools come in, but this is also something you have to train yourself with. So you have to understand that you have to think that things aren't physical. Yes, at this particular time, we're taking these primitive energies, breaking them down into the non-physical that we then use. And a certain amount of the physical we use as we break things down into chemicals, proteins, sugars, etc., that our body then physically uses. But those are the primitive way of doing it. What you'd want to do is to feed proteins and sugars and other things directly into your energetic system without physically taking something or drawing that energy from that, whatever it is. That way we could end this horrible cycle of constantly murdering animals, which you need to do ASAP, because you're never going to get anywhere if you eat meat, plain and simple. You don't need it. There's plenty of other things to do, and it's an acquired taste like everything. When you get off of things like sugar and salt, and then you go back to them, you're basically revolted by it. Stuff that you used to gobble down in huge quantities, now you can barely eat. So, all of these things is what we have to look at in the bigger picture. But how do you do that? Well, how do you grasp these actual energies that are vibrational, subtle energy in nature? Well, first of all, you have to consciously understand what I've just told you and how it works. You have to buy into that. And I don't mean buy into that as a lot of people do. I'll never forget someone many, many years ago who thought that he could move up in the organization by parroting back to me what was in books. And I said, well, I mean, that's great, but you don't get it. You're playing schooly with me. You're regurgitating what's been on a book, and that doesn't put you anywhere in a level in my organization whatsoever. You have to understand things at a very deep level. And the whole idea is that learning information, opinions that you are required to regurgitate to pass a test is not knowledge. And you don't buy it. You just do it. And that's what we do all of life. We assume we're being told something that is correct. We buy into it, and that's it. It's the end of the game, and then we go on our entire life. But that information slowly works into every molecule, every energetic system you have, and starts creating beliefs. So if you think the physical is where everything comes from, well, that then just blocked all of the energies that are non-physical. The vibrational energy blocked it because that's what you believe in. So you can't listen to this and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. Read a book, use one of our products and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. No, do you believe it? Do you get it? And most people don't. You don't believe it. You don't get it. You're going through the motions because it's interesting. But ultimately, deep down in your programming, you believe in what the scientists have told you, these ignorant buffoonish slobs that have done nothing for society. That's what you believe in. And everybody, when push comes to shove, they're going to go and support a society that has produced nothing, that has that people die all the time from corruption because they just don't get it. A society that is evil and corrupt in every way, believe them in comic book. That's the society you believe in. And when it comes down to it, everybody, just like everybody who's a Westerner, basically is a Christian. You'll get very few people out there that say that Christianity, in its basic understanding, is bad. What they're going to say is, churchianity, the people involved in it is bad. But the belief system is good. So everybody is a Christian because you're believing the belief system that Christianity is good based on basically gossip. None of the churches practice that. And the people involved in the churches, as in all religions, and with everything, to be honest with you, there's nothing out there that there's any honesty, that there's any purity. Everybody is corrupt on every single level. It's just what the level of corruption is. And most people are up in that 80 to 90% level of corruption because they want to get along with society. They want to take care of themselves. They don't want conflict. It's very interesting. I listened to a physicist that said that. Why, it's too hard being a conflicting person. You go around, Sean Carroll said that. So it really came down, when you listen to these people and they have to produce hours and hours, it really comes out that, things seem like it's right. And I'm not going to argue it. You're going to go to work every day and argue with people? Well, I understand that as well, but that's being disingenuous. You go along with it because it's easy, even though it's not correct. And that's what everybody does. So you have to figure, how do you attach yourself? Because that's when you start seeing effects. Now, when you tune radionic instruments a lot, use radionic tools, you use cells, you use all the things that we offer, guess what? You start sensing it by going through the motions of doing that. And of course, that's how most people want to learn. Most people want to learn by doing it, and they don't want to do the preliminary, the study, or they don't want to build muscles. They just want to go from a 90-pound weakling to a bodybuilder. Well, it doesn't work like that, but it does in subtle energies to a degree, because if you keep working with these things on a consistent basis and don't give up, but the whole idea is you're not going to manifest very much initially. Usually people have some, beginner's luck, and it's new and it's fun and they're at a high level of excitement and they manifest pretty good initially. But, people get tired of everything. It's like everything in life. It goes from a sacred, amazing tool to that thing I wear with that pattern on it with a number on the back. So people don't understand that you don't keep climbing up in energy. You have to use these things consistently. But that's like saying, I only eat once a week because what's the purpose? Well, generally you have to eat every day, or at least people think they do. But the point is that it becomes common. And when things become common, you lose that initial very important spark that is needed for manifesting. Because remember the rules of manifestation. The first thing you do is you got to do things at high levels of excitement, meaning I'm into this. I'm tired. No, you're not going to manifest doing that. So the whole idea is you have to do things at high energy. And you only do these things very short periods of time. You're talking about literally everything from a half a second to view a sigil in a book to a few seconds for other things. It's done. You don't have to spend hours doing it. Where's the extra energy coming from? It's coming from nowhere, so it's done instantly. And what is the third factor? Do it often. That's right, because then you can approach it that way. Now, if you have to sit down and get involved in something and spend anywhere from, even if it's relatively short, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and you have to take all that time to get set up, to get in a place, it don't work. And I'm not even sure there's any need for that. I don't do any of that stuff any longer. That's kind of old world stupidity. And, we got to remember old world adds up equals stupid. Because all these old practices are no longer valid with the level that people are at and the technologies we have. So the whole idea is you do things at high enthusiasm. Yeah, this is going to work. I know it's going to happen. This is how you have to go into it. Then you do it for very short. You project that energy into your amulet or your cell. Boom. It's done. It's a few seconds. Do you think spending minutes? It doesn't do it. Then, of course, since you've done it and you started this ball rolling, you've got to keep the ball rolling, meaning you have to connect to it often. That's the key. That's what works. That's how you do everything. And I don't care what practice it is you do, whether it's learning in general. Worst thing you do is sit down there and try and read a book for an hour. No, read a book at high intensity or try and learn something for 10, 15 minutes. That's it. Close the book, do something else, come back to it later. You'll find that these things tend to work much better. You'll learn better. But the whole idea is you sensing this stuff is going to take a higher level of getting it, not a higher level as I want to get it. What you want is to get the results from this. So you're buying into it at a very low level of consciousness because you want this to happen. You want to use this because you want to manifest money. You want to use this so you meet a person or influence somebody or heal somebody. You want the end results, obviously. But that's not how it works. You have to understand the energetic makeup of it so you can connect with it and not, that's an interesting theory. You have a book on it? I'd like to read that. Well, what does reading that mean? Yes, that's how you start. We all have to start with things at the very basic level that we're conditioned at. But that's not the answer. You cannot intellectually, what is that, by the way? You can't intellectually buy into something because your intellectualism is based on all of the frauds that you've been told by society. That, by the way, you just don't know what you're talking about. Go to school and learn from the physicists. Oh, I don't need to go to school to learn from them to know that they're failures because they haven't solved any of our problems. So the bottom line is this isn't just talk on my part. This isn't some sort of new fantasy science. If there is something that works, let's see it. Certainly common world doesn't work. And once we throw into that machine, which may be functioning fairly well or maybe even humming along well, we're throwing a bunch of, what's the old saying, monkey wrenches into the machine? Politics. Money, corruption, old world thought that is based in basically money. It's all based in holding power for profit. So once we throw that in there, none of their stuff ever works, and they haven't solved any problems. And we do have lots of solutions, but nobody uses them. And when something is discovered, and I've heard this for years, we've just discovered this. And I heard that 20 years ago. Well, where is it today? It's disappeared because it works. So the bottom line is that we need to we have to have proof. We're going to believe anything that anybody says. We need to have them prove it to us. So don't tell me you're at the top of the shining cathedral up there because you know everything and everybody else is an ignorant peasant, but you really don't produce anything from it. And these scientists are the people that have to lead the way. They have to take the risks. They have to go out there and make things happen and stop leaving it to an ignorant public and a further ignorant and corrupt governmental structure. You can't keep building weapons that destroy the world and giving them to madmen. That's all part of what's on. So the whole idea is you have to get your concept. You have to change your entire thinking. This is why I stress this all the time. So I keep telling you, use tools to do this. Understand what gnosis is, what Christ consciousness is. Because this is truth. And truth and purity will lead you the way to amazing empowerment. And hopefully, when you go through this process, you will also be balanced. Most people aren't. People keep thinking the same ways. And every time something comes up, and that's why I always highlight that on my particular channel. Anytime something comes up, and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, just something that affects us all. One of them right now is the Will Smith incident. The other thing is the Ukrainian war, or the war against the Nazis by the Russians. But that's not how you think about it. Now, you've been told that the bad guys are the Russians, when it's actually the opposite. But you don't believe that. You're talking crazy, man. You're talking. You're not looking at it. You've got no Christ consciousness in you. You're not seeing truth. You're seeing the garbage there. A country that's one of the most corrupt in the world, who is taking billions of dollars and filtering them into account. And a President Zelensky is one of the biggest mafia guys out there, and their whole country has been. These are facts. But you're getting played because you don't get it. You have to use all the techniques I told you. So have you studied the Gnosis course? Have you studied the Radionic course? Do you have those? Well, we do sell these, but they're not exactly best sellers. We should be selling hundreds of these a month. So you get your foundations. Now, we're coming up with a lot more. These were done probably 6-7 years ago, and they're still excellent information. It really doesn't age, but, I had a different perspective then. We're getting more practical now, but it's all practical. You should know about the history of radionics. What is it about? That formulates your understanding and deprograms you from what regular science has told you is impossible. So we go through all that. It's the same thing with the Gnosis course. You've got to understand how to think. You've got to understand how to get to levels above human and to disregard human thoughts. But nobody does this. So that's all part of the process that you have to be able to harness. So if you're going to use these energies, whether they're from a cell or a radionic machine or any of the other subtle energy products that we offer, you need to be able to comprehend what you're doing, and you need to be able to disregard the programming, because your programming comes in and stops these energies from working. And that's another reason not to do things. The longer you think about something, the more toxic energies come in. And that's how everything works. So we have to be very guarding of this so we know exactly how to handle these kind of energies so that we can access them. But if you can't access them because you're living in the breakdown of your bio, that vitamin C tablet, and that's how your consciousness is working, well, you're not going to be able to grab the subtle energies and use them. It's just as simple as that. So you've got to understand these things, not at a level of it's intellectually makes sense to you because you're an alternative thinker, or you wouldn't be listening to this. But you have to understand this at a very deep level and not understand that this are the facts of life. This is how life works. And ironically, regular science really believes in all this stuff. This is what regular physicists tell you how the world works. They break it down into gluons, stick-ons, goop-boo, quarks, morks, and they're all named after silly things. And you find out where you get these names from. What was quarks named after? I forgot where that came from, but that was another kind of comical thing. You got to remember that physicists are just like anybody else. They're kind of goofy people. They're just people, and they are very weak and sniveling in general. So the fact that they push their way through dumbademia is I don't know if that's to their credit or not, but they've been brainwashed to get there, and they're controlled if they're going to stay there. But if you don't understand this, you really can't use these products to their highest level. You're always going to get problems coming in and blockages that pop up because you don't get it, but it's getting it. It's believing it to your core, not accepting it as, yes, that makes scientific proof to me. Because what you're saying is that I really believe in what the regular scientists say. And of course, we try and balance this because I know that's how your consciousness works. So that's why I use scientific terms as well, common scientific terms, because they do kind of intermix. And oddly enough, physicists have somehow been able to access the truths, but they interpret them wrong. And this is the ultimate to everything is basically down to your interpretation of things. Not what you know, how you've been trained. How are you interpreting the information coming to you once you find good information? And if you don't interpret it right, well, you never come up with any answers. So you have to understand that. You have to look at things. And as I said, that's why I look at political situations or things going on and see how people react. And it's very, very interesting. So everybody is brainwashed. Everybody follows the crowd. People don't understand what's going on. I mean, all of these things happen and we don't know the facts of it. And we buy into the emotional beginnings. And people are making all sorts of wrong decisions. And they're not connected to Christ consciousness, gnosis. They're not connected to that. So they can't make right decisions. They do what the crowd says. So if the crowd stands up and gives somebody an ovation for beating somebody in the Academy Awards, well, you just go along. Well, you don't know. The first thing you ought to do in a situation like that is you reverse think. Well, this is wrong. What is the crowd doing? Well, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm not going to stand up. I'm going to sit here. That's what you do. Now, this takes a lot of courage, by the way, because you're going to have the people around you tell you, what's your problem? Why don't you get involved in that? Now, I've done this on all sorts of certain levels. Let me give you a little instance as kind of an amusing one. Well, I don't know if people have heard of medieval times, but you go to this, it's kind of an event, and they have jousting and other things. You sit around, it's a dinner, etc., and they're trying to give you this Middle Ages type feel. And you go and you sit in different areas, and that means the person's going to fight for you. You wear a red hat because of the red knight or whatever. And they have different realities to it. Now, what happened here is, being the charming guy that I am, not only did I try and take a different hat, they, oh, you can't take that, you're in the red section. Okay. Well, then the red section was supposed to be supportive of the king. So the first thing happened when the king came out on his horse is I booed him. Boo! You suck! And of course, everybody in my section, look, oh, we're loyal to the king here. Not me. So this is the kind of reaction you have to be. So that's just normal for my reaction. I've done this throughout my entire life. I always question authority, and I always get against it. And of course, that's why I've reached the state of Christ consciousness at a very young age. And I've been really at that stage pretty much all of my life to one reason or another, modified by personal circumstances, dictatorial evil parents, society, etc. But I've always thought like that. And I've always sought truth, regardless of the penalty for that. Within reason, of course. So this is exactly how you have to think, and that's how you get into that shows that I didn't sit and think I want to be a revolutionary, think I want to go against authority. I did it. And did it in a proper way where it really doesn't have much problem there. What do I give a damn about that idiot that's sitting next to me? That stooge. I could care less. He ain't my buddy or anything else. When I don't go out and hurt people, I could care less what he likes or not like. He's the guy that goes with the crowd. He's the guy that helps people get lynched. He's the guy that stands up when somebody beats somebody else and, oh, we like this other guy. So this is all the things that we have problems out there. And of course, you believe whatever the media tells you to believe. You don't look into the history of it. How many people listening to my voice, and of course, this is what's going on now. This talk will probably be here forever. But how many people looked up the history of the Ukraine? I don't think anybody did it, or at least very few people. They certainly wouldn't be supporting this criminal president and the history of having 200,000 people supported. They supported the Nazis. 1.5 million Jews they murdered. Oh, well, that was then. Has it changed? We've all found out that country is now all ran by the Nazis and their entire military is. And I don't care whether he's a Jew or not that's running that, but that doesn't mean anything. He's a puppet, and what he labels himself doesn't really help anybody. What's going on? This guy tried to get us into World War III to save his butt so he could go to Switzerland with $10 billion of donated money to him. You think any of that money that you're sending to the Ukraine gets to anybody? Yeah, it gets to his pockets. So you have to understand that's how things work. Now, that's not some political statement. It's just a statement of fact. That's how it's working. Know how things work. Know the truth of the situation, and don't support things like that. But that's the way you're thinking. That's just like thinking, what works, taking a pill or using the energy from it? Now, the pill will work energetically on you once you get to that stage of understanding it. Now, this is difficult. We live in a physical world, and quite frankly, it's a lot easier just to take a vitamin C tablet and instead to try and suck the energy out of it. But ultimately, if you want to reach these high levels, if you want to manipulate energies to generate wealth, if you want to manipulate energies to heal yourself, it's all done energetically. Usually, while there are substances, but these substances, I said, still break down. But energy healers, and supposedly, and of course, my world has been shocked by people who claim they be energy healers, but don't seem to produce it, at least not in one area. But those people who claim great results in healing, which have a fair amount of documentation behind them, are not doing this with pills. They're not doing this with machines. They're doing it with their consciousness. But of course, machines are consciousness machines. I've always called them. That's what they are. They're consciousness machines. And they are tools to help you tune your consciousness to affect matter. So that's how it all works. Hopefully that's fairly clear. This is something you have to open yourself up to slowly and get it. You have to understand the processes, but we all have to understand that things are not easy. You're not going to just get a machine, do this, and instantaneous manifest at very high levels. It's going to take time, and it depends on where you're at. Do you get this? Are you blocking it? You say you get it with your mouth, but internally you are creating huge amounts of blocks. And the more you concentrate on it, the more you try and think, quote, logically, or we really should sell illogically, because your logic is based on a faulty system of incorrect values. And people don't understand that everything is wrong. Don't believe anything. It just doesn't make any sense. We have to get down to some very direct understandings. So that's all part of the process. So hopefully that's it. So you have to train yourself. That's why using pendulums. If you're not good at a pendulum use, forget it. You're not going to be able to use a radionic machine, at least a traditional one, which you have to tune. Now, we get over that because we know that people can't use pendulums well. Very few can. And even if they do, I'm doubtful to the actual correctness of it. I've had several people that claim they're good with pendulums. They get rates, and the rates are wrong. They've done it all wrong because they're not sensitive. So that's why we make up things that you can put in there, or will assist you in getting a rate for a particular problem, which is that number code that symbolizes that energy that you then connect to, and then that goes through. So that's all you really need. That's all a machine does. I mean, there are certain advanced applications in terms of amplifications of having wires and other things to a degree, but most of your amplification no longer comes from that, because once you get the number, it's kind of over with. It's what is being amplified, and of course that's where we brought. So having amplification is critical. So that's where all the energy comes from after that, and then you got to pump that in there. It doesn't come from the machine. The machine is just a psychic crutch to get you that informational data and transfer it into numbers. And there is a certain energetic factor to that by having the machine there. But basically, it's a psychic process. You just tuned into a target for whatever reason that is, whether it's yourself or somebody else. You've sent the energy there, and it starts working. That's how it is. Simple as that. And the actual tuning of the machine. So what you need is that very important energetic symbol, which is a number or a glyph or whatever. Usually the combination. I use everything. I use numbers. I use sigils, which are pictographical energy forms. So I use everything there that I can possibly put in there to bring up the energies as strong as possible. But that's how it works. That's what you have to do. People have to get ahead. They have to start doing the basic work. And this doesn't mean all day. It's not stressing. But if you're not doing the basic centerings, if you're not doing the occult gym, if you're not using visualization tools, and I know most of you aren't because these things don't sell very well, and you haven't listened to the Radionic course, you haven't listened to the Gnosis course, well, you're not going to get very many places. The tools do push you ahead, and certainly it makes you 500 to 1,000 times stronger than you would be without them. Because if you don't have the tools, you don't have a chance in hell. But what people want, and I know what everybody wants is genie lamp technology, and it doesn't exist. You can make yourself into a genie lamp with lots of practice, and it's not hard. I make it extremely fun. But people don't want to take the time. They don't want to take the time to build the consciousness of how to use pendulums and how to build their energy by using all these different tools and kits. They just want to get the tool and manifest right away. Now, that's a hard way, and it does produce results to a degree. But you're going to get to a level where you can't produce past that, and that's what most people run into, and it requires that extra training. So hopefully that's clear. This, again, is a very important understanding of subtle energy physics and the energies that you're trying to harness and bring into your life and how to do it and what that's all about compared to what is physical. Until next time.